Hey there, this is Weil with All Square Mortgage. I'm going to do a quick video here on the residual income calculation for VA. The page in point is actually called VA loan analysis, but it's more commonly known as the residual income. Anyway, I'm going to work on a file here. I have deleted as much information as I could to sort of keep the privacy of the borrower, but we are going to go and do this real quick. It's pretty simple. You're going to go to forms up here and go all the way down to VA and then slide over to VA loan analysis. That's your residual income page. And this is what it looks like. So name and everything imports over, all that kind of stuff. The only thing you're going to do manually as far as importing is you're going to write down here from loan app. That's going to import your income and your liabilities and that sort of stuff. So you can do that. You'll hit that button and you see all this stuff populated into here. Now, if you change anything on your 1003 later, you will have to hit this each time. So it doesn't change once you've populated, it doesn't continue to change. So if you add income or add a liability or subtract a liability or whatever the case may be, it does not change the page here. So you'll have to hit from loan app each time. You don't need to do much up here. Everything, all this stuff fills. The only thing you will need to do is line 19 here, maintenance and utilities. You do need to account for utility costs. The rule of thumb on this one is 14 cents per square foot of the house. So, 2,000 square foot house, you're looking at $280. If you're TBDing somebody, I usually just use a 2,500 square foot house. In most cases, that's about the max that the people that we're dealing with day in and day out are looking at. A lot of times it's closer to 2,000. So you can always change the number later. But if you do your trusty calculator, 2,500 square feet times 0.14 is 350. So 350 is always the number I use at the beginning. Until you know what house they're looking at. So let's just go with that one for now. That's the only thing you need to do up here. Everything else is populated for you. You'll go down to section D is the liabilities. You have to mark the liabilities you want to include as liabilities that are going to count against them. So it's not like page 2 and 3 where you're checking off things that you're paying off. This is kind of the opposite. So you want to hit them for these monthly payments. Now you may have collections or that sort of thing where you're not trying to hit them, so you won't mark those ones. But in this case, obviously, they only have 2 liabilities, one of which, according to the credit report, doesn't have a payment. I probably want to find out about that because it's probably going to be asked about since there is a balance, but that's not what we're talking about today. So in this case, we're just going to hit them for this one. That's the only payment they have. So that's $600 that we're $612 that we're actually hitting them for. So you're going to go down here. Section E is income and deductions. The income, as I said, populates between the 2 borrowers. Now, the only thing you need to do on this is you do need to put in whatever they're taking out of monthly for your taxes or Social Security or all that sort of stuff. So again, for the sake of privacy, I'm not going to pull their paychecks and stuff over and go through them with you, but most military LESs are monthly, so it's pretty simple. You can just pull the federal income tax that they're charged for that month right off of the LES. But if you have a borrower who's VA but no longer in the VA and they have a civilian job where they're paid every 2 weeks or twice a month or however that is, you have to figure that out as a monthly payment. So if they're have $160 in federal income tax every 2 weeks, then you need to do the calculation and figure out what that means for a month so that you would put that number in there. So I don't know, again, I'm not going to, let's just make up numbers here, but let's say they have $300 in federal income tax. There's no state income tax in Washington. And then Social Security, if they have, let's say there's another $120 that's taken out of there for that. If there's any other things on there, I usually just put them in here. A lot of times there's a lot of little things after those two main ones. For the sake of being a little conservative, I usually just add all those up and throw them in there. Part of the point of doing this is just to make sure your calculation is going to fit the guidelines. So if you go overboard a little bit or a little conservative, as I said before, and you are still falling within the guideline, then you know you're going to be okay. You can raise questions later if you are really close to the guideline lines, and then you can further ask someone, your AE probably, on what does or doesn't count as far as residual stuff. So I would just put that in here, put miscellaneous or whatever, and add, if there's several of them, just add them all up. Let's just, for the sake of doing this exercise, let's do this. And we'll say there's like $56 and other little things that come out. So you can close that. That 56 shows up right here. You can see their total monthly deductions is 476, which all this stuff does is reduce their net income. Now this is VA, so one other thing I want to mention, if you are using grossed up numbers like BAH and BAS that's grossed up, you cannot gross them up for residual income. So if you had, say, $2,000 in BAH that you grossed up to $2,300, you need to subtract that from the salary. So the salary would go down to, in this case, by that example, go down to $3,600. So you're allowed to gross that up to qualify for the loan, but you're not allowed to use grossed up earnings on the residual income page. So any questions on that, just call your AE, obviously. So what all this, and I don't know what the spouse's, what the income is from. Let's just say she has some sort of, it looks like pension or something. So she has something, let's just, for the sake of it, say she had a couple $100 coming out each month. So then you're going to go down here. All this stuff calculates for you. Again, check all your numbers and stuff if you hit from loan app again. So if you do that again, if you're bringing in more information later, do it again, and you're going to have to check this stuff again and do all that kind of stuff just to make sure nothing changed. So this is about it. You're going to go down here. Line 43 is 20. This means $2,500 and $2,518. That is what money they are left with after, basically after paying their bills that we're concerned with. So now we need to look at the guidelines. So is that enough based on the VA guidelines? So I'm going to pull this table over here real quick onto the screen. This is a table that lists what the guideline is. The top stuff up here is for anything under $80,000, which we're probably never going to do. So you don't have to worry about that. Down here is $80,000 and above as far as your loan amount. So, and then you're going to go over here to the west. Obviously, in almost every case, we're worried about the west. Now, if we look back, this is based on the number of people in the household. So we have the borrower and his wife. You can see right here, they have 3 kids. So that's 5 people in the household. Now that would include, if you happen to know that grandma's living with them too, or whoever, it's everyone who lives in the household. In this case, we know it's 5, so you're going to go down here west. Family of 5 is 1158. So you will put 1158. That's the guideline. You can see that they have plenty of money left over, about almost $1,400. So you know you're good with these borrowers. Like I said earlier, we think we were a little conservative. We added all those little things up to $56. We have a house. Now they have 5 people, so maybe their house will be a little bit higher than $350 based on the 14-cent calculation. But you have almost $1,400 to work with. So you know this borrower is plenty good as far as a residual income. Now I'm just going to mention one thing real quick. If you're on line 43, and this is not an example of this, but if you do have numbers that are really, really close, let's say this 2,500 was really only 1,200 or something like that. Then you'll need to kind of look at, well, what's my DTI ratio? In this case, it's a little over 50%. If you're anywhere over about 43 or 45% in DTI and your guideline, now obviously if your guideline numbers are, if this said $1,000 and $1,092, you know they don't meet the guidelines, so they don't qualify residual wise for that house. Now, what I was getting to earlier is if the numbers are really close, let's say it's a little over 1,200 or something like that, but your DTI is over 43 or 45 or especially 50, then you're going to want to check with your AE on whether or not there's any sort of overlay for having a high DTI. And when I say high, I mean probably I'd be leery of it anything over about 43, just to be careful, at least ask those questions. Because in some cases, if you are over 43 or 45 or 50 or whatever the case may be, there will be an overlay in which you need to be 20% over the guideline. So let's say we have 1158 right here. That would mean you would need to be actually, let's do the math here, 20%, or maybe it's 25, whatever the percentage is, you would need to actually be at almost $1,400, which is $1,389. So be leery of, if your numbers are really close and your DTI is relatively high, that's when you reach out to your AE and just be sure that you are not in risk of being not over high enough, if that's the right way to put it. So I hope that answers your questions. That table that the residual income table will also be in Trainual to go along with this. And that should be it. We'll talk to you soon.